against all odds and against the establishment, was overwhelmingly elected. He's a believer in liberty. He's a champion of liberty. Almost all the pundits say he's a future president of the United States.
Yeah!
He's a co-founder of the Tea Party Caucus in the Congress. He's an ophthalmologist, a professional businessman who sacrificed to go into public service just like his father did. He's married to a beautiful wife, Kelly, who's here, and I hope she'll come up on stage so you can get some pictures of her. They have 3 sons, William, Duncan, and Robert, and they are here. And in the next hour or so, you're going to be meeting members of the Ron Paul family. They don't often do this, so this is a great treat for all of us. They are the first family of liberty in the United States. They have changed politics forever. They have changed the discussion this year. He has the hottest YouTubes online if you haven't seen him. My favorite is when he talks about pro-choice in the toilet. Yours too? Great sense of humor, a great intellect, and a great leader. Please welcome the Senator from Kentucky, Rand Paul, and his wife, Kelly.
Thank you, thank you. I'd like to introduce my wife, Kelly Paul. Anybody here for Ron Paul? Anybody here think Ron Paul was right and has been right for decades? Anybody here want a president who will defend the Constitution and defend us from big government? I believe we are at a crossroads. I believe that our republic is threatened at every turn. I believe that our debt is consuming us, and if we don't act soon, there are going to be great difficulties ahead. Ron Paul has been one, sounding the alarm, talking about how our debt is going to destroy us. We will pay for our debt one way or another. It's coming, but we will pay for our debt through the destruction of our dollar, and that will be devastating to all of us. We've seen what's going on in London. We've seen the rioting and the fires. We've seen what's going on in Greece. We've seen the violence, the bricks thrown through the windows. We want to capture and keep our republic before we get to that chaos, before those times come to America, and we need a leader now, and I think you know that Ron Paul would be that leader. We are in the midst of a failed presidency. We have a president who has been wrong about every issue of the day, who is making the economy worse. I believe we have a president who is the most anti-business president we've ever had. This president will add more debt than all 43 previous presidents combined. This president is adding new regulation on a daily basis. This president has an EPA that carries weapons, a Department of Agriculture that carries weapons. Just the other day, the Department of Agriculture sent a SWAT team into an organic food store to stop them from serving milk directly from the cow. The government is here to protect us from ourselves, but we want a government who will protect our liberties. Recently, we went through a debate in Washington, and it was a bit of a charade. They said August 2nd was this crisis coming. There never was any crisis about August 2nd. The crisis is about whether we as a country can manage and pay our debt. It's coming to a time when we will not be able to pay for our debt except for by increasing the printing press faster and faster and faster. Where once upon a time our dollar was backed by gold, then our dollar was backed by treasury bonds. But you know what it's backed by now? Nothing. Virtually nothing. It's worse than nothing. It's backed by toxic assets, things that no one would buy. We now live under a standard where the dollar is backed by used car loans and bad home loans. It's a disgrace, and people are waking up. Now, some said, oh, it was a Tea Party downgrade. They downgraded the debt. And I say that's like blaming firemen for fires. We were elected to go to Washington to put out the fire of debt. We had nothing to do with accumulating $14 trillion worth. We're the ones sounding the alarm, and all of a sudden they say it's our fault. They said, oh, the Tea Party's a bunch of hobbits. I said, well, I'd rather be a hobbit than a troll. And besides, weren't the hobbits the good guys? Didn't the hobbits win the war in Middle-earth? They've got one thing right, though. It's a battle between good and evil. To steal from the future, to get and live large off of government largesse now, is theft. It's morally wrong and something we must change. One of the questions the other night in the debate is, how would the Ron Paul movement work together with Democrats? How would anything ever occur? It's really what they fail to grasp about our movement is that our movement has people from all walks of life that have come together under the banner of freedom, but it's also people on both sides that could compromise. The Republicans will have to someday acknowledge that all military spending is not sacred or well spent, and that we can save money from the military budget. Democrats will have to acknowledge that all money spent on social welfare, all money spent on entitlements is not sacred or well spent, and the Democrats will have to acknowledge that they will have to cut social spending. That is truly the compromise. The compromise is about cutting spending across the board. And some say, oh, the Tea Party's so radical. They're too radical. We could never balance the budget. You guys would not compromise. You were rigid. You would not compromise unless there were a balanced budget. Well, my goodness, is it extreme to believe that we should gradually balance our budget over a 7 to 8 year period? I tell people that is the compromise. I'm compromising by not doing it immediately, by saying I will accept a compromise over 7 to 8 years. People say, well, how would it be done? How could you possibly balance the budget? You'd have to cut so much. Well, the interesting thing is, 1 penny out of every dollar for 6 years, and then free spending, and the budget balances in 8 years. That is not a radical solution. That is something we absolutely must do. If Ron Paul wins today, some will try to discount it and say, oh, well, he just wins straw polls. This isn't an online poll. This isn't 200 people at a picnic. This is going to be 14,000 people here today. And if Ron Paul wins the poll today, it's going to be a message heard around the world. Those who like to paint the picture and like to paint the narrative that this is only a bunch of extremists, that this could never get anywhere, have not been looking at or reading or watching the polls. When Ron Paul is polled against Obama, he does as well as any candidate or better. Yeah! Ron Paul has something that no other Republican candidate has. He has the ability to attract independents. Many here today came to the Republican Party and are still coming to the Republican Party because of Ron Paul, and the Republican Party ought to be very happy and proud to have Ron Paul. Some say, oh, your movement's all just about cutting this or cutting that. It's this coldness of austerity. I would say it's about embracing freedom. It's about embracing and acknowledging and accepting that warm embrace that will lead to prosperity. We don't get anywhere unless we begin growing again as a nation. We will not begin to grow as a nation again until we believe in ourselves. believe in our founding documents, believe that anything is possible, believe that profit is not a dirty word, that wealth is not a dirty word, and that liberty has allowed the most humanitarian nation and the greatest amount of wealth ever to occur in one location ever, and that it is this idea of freedom, it is this idea of liberty that we are here today to support, and that it will lead to, once again, the greatest country ever seen on earth. I hope you'll stay today and get more votes out for Ron Paul. Thank you.
Rand Paul. And when Ron Paul is president, Rand Paul will be there in the Oval Office whispering in his ear every day. You vote for Ron, you get Rand, and Kelly, and Carol. And Carol will be on in just a few minutes. So let me help you plan your moment here and plan the day. Remember, they're taking your liberty, they took your IRAs, your retirement, they've taken the value of your home. Don't let them have your vote. I know it's inconvenient. I know you have to wait in a line. I know it's hard. Some of these young people, let me tell you about a lady here who flew in from Texas. She had 12 hours on, 12 hours off. On the hours off, she hopped on a plane to fly up here and work instead of sleep, and then go back to Texas. Hard on her, too. It's tough the way this is set up here. Please wait in that line and cast your vote. We are in a very tight, close election. So when the lines kind of get down, get over there and get in line. When the line gets too long and you're at the end of the line, you don't like that, you can come back out here up on deck. You know how ESPN runs them along the side? Let me run them along the side for you here. Carol Paul will be coming soon. Barry Goldwater Jr. will be coming soon. Barry Goldwater has only 30 books with him. Right after he speaks, he will stand down from the stage and autograph the first 30 people who come up and buy those 30 books. So we have some great speakers lined up here. It'll be fun here, but the main thing is to get in that line, get your vote done. Don't forfeit that right. Make your voice heard. And now, it is my great privilege to introduce to you Small Time Dave and the Windy City Groove. Thank you.